I'm your host, Nathan Mathisen. Thank you for joining me this Sunday morning. Now, it is not a good Sunday morning for Husky fans as last night they lost to Colorado 20 to 17, and that officially ended their chance at becoming bowl eligible. So, not a good day for the Huskies in a game that they should have won, that they outmatched the opponent in really all aspects on the football field, skill wise. They performed better throughout the season than this team, yet they lost. And how did they lose, or why did they lose? Well, a big thing with it was the turnovers, or really, that was the reason they lost. The turnovers absolutely killed the Huskies. It killed any momentum they were trying to build, it killed any chance they had of winning that game. Right, Washington had 426 total yards of offense, and they lost. 426 total yards of offense compared to Colorado's 183 total yards. How do you lose that game? The Huskies outmatched or outgained, outperformed Colorado in almost every offensive aspect. Third down conversions, time of possessions, everything, first downs. They had way more first downs, yet they still lost. I mean, the Huskies had 388 passing yards, yet they still lost. That's the thing. Yet they still lost with all these things. Because in the end, that's what matters. The Huskies had 36 minutes of possession compared to Colorado having the ball for only 24 minutes, yet they still lost. Yet they still lost. Because that's what matters. Wins and losses is what matters. And the Huskies having four turnovers cost them the game. By having four turnovers, it 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 was it was just impossible for them to win the game because Dylan Morris kept turning the ball over. Each possession in the second half. The second half started with turnover, turnover, missed field, or there was turnover, missed field goal, turnover, turnover. Next thing you know, there's 4 minutes left in the game before they can score a touchdown. I mean, let's just break down each of these turnovers. So the first turnover of the game was that classic QB center exchange fumble. And it's tough to tell on those situations if it's the quarterback's fault, center's fault. It looked like the ball got to Dylan Morris's hands, yet when he came out, it kind of got caught up on Luke Wartenberg. So I don't know what happened there. Ball just slipped, didn't get all the way into the palms of Dylan Morris's hands, or what happened. But what ensued was possibly the most unlucky thing possible, with the ball getting kicked by one of the offensive linemen's feet and rolling back behind the line of scrimmage behind Dylan Morris. Next thing you know, the only guy near it is Colorado player who just scoops it up and runs the 80 plus yards back the other way to score a touchdown. I mean, that you couldn't have gotten more unlucky than that. UW, they allowed a field goal on the opening drive, but here UW comes. They're marching down the field. They're in prime position to score, go up 7-3 after each team having a possession. Yet instead of that, they're now down 10-3. So all of a sudden, they're down 10-0 to a team that isn't good. Their only wins in the Pac-12 came against Arizona and Oregon State. Colorado had struggled all year, yet here they are sitting up 10-0 on a Washington team that has shown that their offense is incapable of scoring or of putting up big numbers. Yet, of course, in this game, they did put up those big numbers. The Husky offense did put up the big numbers, yet what happened? The turnovers. I mean, the next turnover was possibly it was one of his worst turnovers of the year. It wasn't his worst turnover of the year, as the worst one was clearly, I'm thinking that was the Oregon game where he threw in a triple coverage to Jalen McMillan. That was probably his worst turnover of the year. But this one comes pretty close with Morris. They're putting together a nice drive. The game's tied at 10 at this point. And he makes this horrible throw. It's coming out of the half, and he just makes a horrible throw. He throws it a bit late. He was kind of rolling out to the left, and there was that outside linebacker or outside pass rusher kind of forcing him to try to make a different throw angle, I guess. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to avoid throwing it right above or right at the defensive edge rusher, which is a good thing. But by doing that, he ended up throwing it to a point where it was hard for the receiver to catch it. The receiver had to kind of stop. It came back, brought him back to the defender, who then got in there. Ball got tipped up and ball got intercepted. It was as simple as that. He forced the more complicated throw and it didn't work out. It did not work out in his favor and it got picked off. Now, the third turnover, it was another one where it was just horrible, a horrible timing of a turnover to occur. And for this one, you can't put it on Dylan Morris, I think, at least, as the ball never got to his hands. It was another center exchange fumble, this time from the shotgun. Well, I don't know what happened on the snap. The snap got caught up on Wattenberg somehow, or it got caught on something and just ended up landing short to the right of Dylan Morris. Somehow, neither Cam Davis, who I believe was the running back at that time, wasn't able to get to it, or Dylan Morris wasn't able to get to it, and the Colorado guy just fell on it. So now Colorado's at Washington's 7-yard line, prime position to score. And you have to give props to the Husky defense at this point, as they held them to a field goal, which was huge. That kept the game within reach at only 13-10 instead of what could have easily been 17-10. Now, Washington's next possession was the fourth turnover for Dylan Morris. And this is just an inexcusable turnover again. Inexcusable turnover on Dylan Morris's part. Here they are once again. The Huskies are driving. They're driving down the field, poised to score a touchdown or at least get a field goal to tie the game with Colorado. They're at Colorado's 28-yard line. So they're almost in the red zone. And here they do. They run a go route with Jalen McMillan. Jalen McMillan beats his corner. He's got a step or two, step and a half, and Dylan Morris underthrows the ball. That's all that can be said about that. He underthrows the ball, allows the corner to make a play on the ball, and it's an easy interception. And those are the things that have just consistently been there for Dylan Morris. Underthrown balls that cause interceptions. It's become routine for Dylan Morris to underthrow his receivers and for that ball to then just get intercepted. I mean, Dylan Morris on the year, he has 12 interceptions. He's got 14 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. He's almost got a 1-to-1 ratio. That is not ideal at all. He has shown inaccuracies consistently. He's thrown only 60% completion rating, so nothing special at all. And he also doesn't get the ball down the field. He's averaging 6.8 yards per pass. And that isn't a winning record or a winning recipe. And it's shown in these losses. Countless times these losses, you can pinpoint a Dylan Morris error that then causes a momentum shift, causes them to lose momentum, just causes something big to happen for the opposition. As against Colorado, they were consistently in position. The Huskies were consistently in a position to go up. They were consistently in a position to get all the momentum on their side. Yet each time you think, oh, here we go. Huskies are building the momentum. The Huskies have built it up. They're going to score here, go up a touchdown. Their defense is going to get a stop, because pretty much that's what the defense did. They held Colorado when it wasn't put in ideal position. Looking at this place, looking at the play-by-play here. So there was the fumble return for a touchdown. Well, there was the field goal to open the drive or open the series or open the game, for Colorado. And then next possession was a fumble recovered for a touchdown. Colorado scored. Then they went 3 plays and punt, 3 plays and punt, 3 plays and punt, 4 plays and punt to end the half. So Colorado got nothing when Washington didn't gift them the ball in the first half. Now in the second half, Washington throws an interception. Colorado, 3 plays and punt. Washington misses a field goal. 4 plays and punt. Now, even with all these miscues by Washington, their defense is still a top defense against the pass, and Colorado wasn't able to get much of a running game going. So they're holding strong, yet eventually they just can't hold any longer when you put them inside the 10 already. So after that fumble, they get a field goal. Now, the very next play, Washington needs an answer, and that's when that interception happened. And it's just the defense has just been put in bad situation after bad situation, the pressure of the entire game on their shoulders, and they folded that time. Colorado ran a 14 play, 80-yard touchdown drive that left 4 minutes left on the clock. Colorado up 10 at this point. It was just too much for that defense to consistently go out there and stop Colorado. I mean, when your defense, and this is how it's been this the whole year. The whole year has been just like this, where they can never get the Huskies defense can never get a break. They are always asked to go out there and basically win the game. They're consistently being asked, our offense can't win us a game. You guys have to go out there and hold the opposition to under 17 points. You got to force turnovers. You have to get us the momentum. And heck, even in games when they've done that, they did that against Oregon. They got the Huskies the momentum time in and time again in the first quarter, and they lost. The Huskies offense is just broken. It's as simple as that. The Huskies offense, even after firing John Donovan, it's not like they could just flip a switch and have a whole new play calling system, whole new offensive game plan. They can't. They've got pretty much the same plays. It's just choosing them maybe is a bit different. And you've seen that. You saw that especially against ASU, against Colorado. It was almost like they went back to the John Donovan. You saw those runs up the middle going more consistently on first down versus when they were playing ASU, you saw the trickery. There weren't many trick plays against Colorado. And that was something that kind of confused me. I expected there to be more of those flashy trick plays, more of those outside end arounds, more of those wide receiver runs like they attempted so many times against ASU. Yet against Colorado, they didn't run a single wide receiver run. It just confuses me. Why? I mean, you saw success for that against Oregon. The times they ran it, there was success. There were times when they had a shot, it was just an error throw or a missed block here and there. And against Colorado, there probably would have been bigger holes, as let's face it, Colorado is not as good as ASU. Yet the Huskies didn't take that advantage. And in the end, all those turnovers, not taking those outside runs, just going up the middle, it cost them in the end. And it is why they're not bowl eligible. So looking at the state of the Huskies program, it's not at a good spot. I mean, they're missing a bowl game for the first time since 2009. Who would have thought that? Just 5 years removed from going to the college football playoffs, this Washington program is not even going to a bowl game. They're not even going to a Holiday Bowl. They're not even going to the Las Vegas Bowl or whatever that bowl's called. But I mean, who would have thought that the Huskies would not be bowl eligible 5 years after one of their best seasons? And Jimmy Lake, in 2 seasons as head coach, has really nosedived the program. He's set them back for maybe a few years. It might be tough to turn this around unless they can get some big hire, some huge splash hire who can flip the switch, get the recruiting back and all. Because when Jimmy Lake was elevated to head coach, when he was promoted from co-defensive coordinator to head coach, he had the pieces around him to succeed. He had the players, is what I mean. He had the players, and then the coaches, He didn't have because he didn't hire good coaches or make good coaching decisions. He hired John Donovan, a failed Penn State offensive coordinator who spent the last 4 years just hanging around the Jacksonville Jaguars as maybe a running backs coach or just a running backs assistant coach, hanging around the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not a good NFL team. He hung around there for a few years after being thrown out and celebrated after he was fired from Penn State after leading them to have a horrid offense with Saquon Barkley, Marquise Goodwin, maybe not Marquise Goodwin, Chris Godwin. He had Chris Godwin, Saquon Barkley, yet he ran one of the worst offenses in college football. And that's the guy Jimmy Lake hired as offensive coordinator. He was doomed from that. From that point forward, there was a high likelihood of him failing, and that's what he did. It took him 2 years to fail. It took him 2 years to drive this program into the ground. It took him 2 seasons, not even 2 seasons. It took him 4 games in 2020. And then how many did he coach this year? Like 8 games or whatever, 9 games he coached this year, and he's driven them into the ground. He's driven them back years in their progress as he failed at recruiting. That's what Jimmy Lake did. That's why one of the reasons he's driven them back is he's flopped in the recruiting aspect of things. He's currently the 2022 class, the class he had, is 54th ranked in the nation. 54th. That's not good at all. The Huskies, that if it stays at 54 in that range, that'll be the worst class the Washington Huskies have had since it was either 2008 or 2009, the class, I believe, after the 0-12 year, which was ranked 75th. That's how bad this class is. It's the worst since that year where they were winless. Now, how are the Huskies going to flip this? How are the Huskies going to rebuild this program? It's obvious it's going to start with the head coach hire. The head coach hire is going to be a huge decision. I appear to have froze here. Okay. No, I think we're back. All right. So the head coach hire is going to be it's going to decide it. Obviously, the head coach, the Jimmy Lake head coach hire decided it to be bad. So what will Jen Cohen do now, round 2, hiring a head coach? This is your second chance at hiring a football head coach. And she's got lots of options. I actually got off my script a bit, but we'll just jump down to where I mentioned the head coaches here. So she has resources, at least she says she does, and I think she does have the resources to go out there and hire whoever she wants. She can spend the money. She can spend $5 million on a head coach. She has the ability. The Huskies let's think, it would have been Chris Peterson's last year, I believe. They had a top 8 pool for their assistants money they were spending on, and they were paying Chris Peterson in that $4 to $5 million range, I believe. And nowadays, that would easily, if they'd kept him, they'd be paying him that $5 to $6 million range. So the Huskies, Washington, they have the resources to go out there and hire whoever they want. And really the most popular and biggest name that's been thrown out there, of course, is Bob Stoops. And that really all started with Stoops being good friends with Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson and Stoops are great friends. Chris Peterson's involved in the Huskies head coach hire in all likelihood. So will that connection bring Stoops to Washington? I would love it. I would love Stoops to be at Washington. I think he'd be a great coach, but I don't think it happens. I know that per sources, the players want Stoops. They were asked who they would want. Majority of them or a lot of them said they want Stoops. Yet the thing is, I don't know if Stoops wants Washington. I don't know if he wants to coach anymore. He's 61 years old and he doesn't really have anything left to prove. He won 1 national championship at Oklahoma. Maybe he wants another one of those, but is Washington the place for that? At Oklahoma, he was 190-48 in his 18 seasons. is Washington the place that takes him out of retirement? Or perhaps there's a place like Florida who might fire their head coach in Dan Mullen, and apparently Stoops might be a little higher on Florida. It's SEC, it's big time football versus going up to the Pac-12. He's used to playing big time football, Big 12, Oklahoma, especially in his later years and early years, playing in these huge games, playing in football country versus going up to Washington. He could go to Florida, play in the SEC, play in the big boy league, or he could come up for the Pac 12, play on the West Coast for the first time. Now, if Washington is able to somehow convince him to come up here and play, then I think it'd be a home run hire. Like I mentioned, he coached only at Oklahoma, so he doesn't have experience out on the West Coast, but that's not as big of an issue, I think, in my opinion, or a big deal with recruiting, as he's big game Bob. Hiring him, it'll help recruiting. It won't hurt it, and he might not have as many connections out here, but let me tell you, every prospect knows who Bob Stoops is. They know what he is, and they know what he brings to the table. He brings a winning culture. He brings a winning team, and I mean, his assistants staff that he'll bring with him likely will be one of the top in the country. So if the Huskies can somehow convince him to come here, then it is going to be huge for the program. And they could easily rebuild within a year or two, just based off the recruits that he might be able to swing with him and the transfers that he'll likely be able to get for next year. Now, overall, there have been a lot of coaches that have had their names thrown out there as possible targets. But really, at this point, for the most part, it's all guesswork. I mean, there's probably been, I've heard 15 names talked about for guys the Huskies could be going after. And that's because nobody really knows who they're going after. It's all guesswork. Now, a couple of names that have been thrown out there that I feel would be poor decisions, would be horrible decisions, and likely would sink this program even farther are Justin Wilcox and Jonathan Smith. Those are two names that should not be the next head coach at Washington. Two Pac 12 head coaches, two guys who came from Washington, came from that Chris Peterson era, and that's what you need to get rid of. The Huskies need to move on from the 2014 to 2021 era with Chris Peterson. It's run its course with Jimmy Lake. Justin Wilcox and Jonathan Smith are simply Jimmy Lake 2.0 kind of guys who were defensive guys, and then they've had a head coach experience for a couple years compared to Jimmy Lake going straight from defensive coordinator to head coach at Washington. So those are two names that I would not like to hear. Now, besides hiring a head coach, what the program also have to look at is players they're going to lose. There might be a handful of guys who transfer. There also could be a few guys who just go to the NFL, opt out early. And a few of those who I think, the guys who are most likely to do so, I would say Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, Brendan Radley, Hiles, and Jackson Kirkland. And if they lose those three corners, those three defensive backs, then it's going to be trouble. And all three of those guys could leave. Trent McDuffie's probably the most likely. Kyler Gordon's put together a great season. I've seen reports from scouts really loving him, guys really thinking that he's just as good as Trent McDuffie. Actually, I've read in a couple of places thinking that he also is a top 5 corner in the class. And then Brendan Radley Hiles, a guy who he's made some plays. He made some plays at Oklahoma. He's got the longevity in his career at college. He's got the big sample size to where he could be a second round pick maybe. And maybe he chooses to stay, maybe he chooses to leave. But if the Huskies lose those three guys to the NFL, then it's going to be tough for this defense to rebuild, as they're not recruiting well at defensive back. This upcoming 2022 class, they have one defensive back, I believe. He's a 3-star listed as an athlete who was recruited by Will Harris, so it looks like he'd be a defensive back. But he's not going to make an instant impact. So who on the Huskies roster right now would make an instant impact at defensive back, at corner specifically, if they lose guys like McDuffie, Gordon, and Buki? They've got Michelle Powell, who I think, even he's still a walk-on, but I think he is clear-cut capable of starting for the Huskies. He started one game, played a bunch in the one of the other games. So he had against that was against Stanford where he played a bunch of games. He started against Cal. So Michel is someone I'm not worried about. I think he could easily step in next year and be a starter for this team. Yet behind him, who is it that will be able to replace a Gordon or a Radley Hiles in the slot or the other outside corner? Who is it that's able to do that? I don't know who that is on the roster. And that's what's scary. They're going to need to get a transfer, I think. And so that's going to go back to the head coach hire. Can they hire a big head coach? I don't know. Now, we're running out of time, and I got a lot more to talk about. So we're going to have to start picking up the pace here. So, who disappointed against going back to the game against Colorado? Who really disappointed? Really, it's just going to have to lead off with Luke Weinberg and Dylan Morris, the guys who caused those turnovers. Luke Weinberg and Dylan Morris combined on two of them with the fumbled snaps. Dylan Morris had the two interceptions. Overall, you can't be messing up the snap. It's week 11. You guys have been taking snap. You were the center and quarterback last year as well. So you got plenty of practice together. Yet here you are in a big game where you need to win in order to get bowl eligible. And you're just messing up the snap. It's what people learn in Pee Wee football. You don't want to fumble the snap, yet here they are doing it twice in one game. And it cost them. It's inexcusable. And that's what cost Washington to lose the game, the turnovers. Had Washington been able to avoid any of those four turnovers, had they only had three turnovers, in all likelihood, they'd have been leaving Boulder with victory, yet four turnovers was just too big to overcome. And it cost them to not be bowl eligible for the first time since 2009. So those are who disappointed, but who shined. There were a few guys, especially on offense at receiver. Rome Odunze once again balled out. I've been saying for a while now that he and Jalen McMillan are great receivers to build around, to build a program up of. Both 4 stars coming in, and they've both shown flashes at times this year of being special. They both had great games. And yesterday against Colorado, Odunze did just that. They've both got the physique, they've both got the skill set to be NFL talents when they leave Washington. I mean, you saw that from Odunze today. He had 9 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown. He was getting open on almost every play. It was just a matter of if Morris was able to find him and then throw an accurate enough ball for him to be able to catch. I think he got around 15 targets yesterday, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. I don't have the exact number, but he was getting targeted a lot and he was making catches. He made big plays. Now, speaking on another receiver who made big plays, that'd be Devin Culp at tight end. He put together a really good game. With Kadon possibly out for the season, Culp was going to get plenty of opportunities in these last few games, and here he was again taking advantage of those opportunities. He did it earlier when Otten was out, and here he is again. 6 catches, 83 yards. He had a number of third down conversions. I believe it was 3. So he came up when Dylan Morris needed an escape route. Culp was there to fill the place of Otten. You also have to give props to Jalen Polk, who he'd been out since really the first series, I think it was, against Montana. He got injured. He hadn't played since then. And now in his first game back, he has 2 catches, 55 yards, including a touchdown that put Washington within 3. So he gets a shout out. He really shined. Great job filling in. He was another transfer who was looked at as being someone who played a lot. And due to the injury, he wasn't able to. But with how he came back from that injury, it's clear that he's going to be making an impact on the field next year for the Huskies. Now, talking about the Apple Cup, Washington's long streak of winning the Apple Cup seems destined to end this year. The Huskies are currently on a 10-game winning streak in the Apple Cup against Wazoo. Haven't lost since 2007, and it really hasn't been close in recent years. The last one-possession game came back in 2010. Yet this year, the tide has switched. The tables have turned, you could say, and Washington struggled this year. They're 4-7. They could be even worse than 4-7. Some of these games they might not have deserved to win, but came out on top in the end. And the Cougars are sitting at 6-5. So all the Huskies are playing for is pride. They're not going to kick the Cougars out of a bowl game because they've already earned one. So all they're playing for is pride right now. Well, what the Cougars are playing for is a chance to dominate against the Huskies for someone who's beat up on them for the past decade plus. It's the chance for the Cougars to do the same to the Huskies, give them their own treatment back. So it's going to be tough for the Huskies. I mean, it's been a long season for the Huskies with lots happening, coach being fired, offensive coordinator being fired. A lot of changes are coming to the Huskies program. And this is the last game of the season. Can they end it on a positive note? I don't think so. I'm not picking the Huskies. I would pick the Cougars to win this game 31-17. So I know, well, let's actually go 24-17. The Huskies have been in basically a one possession game every single game this season. So I think that continues. And they lose this game by one touchdown, 24-17. End the season 4-8 and put all their focus on finding a next head coach who can get them back to the promised land, get them back to playing Husky football. But that brings it up to the end of today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back next weekend, probably Sunday again. The Apple Cup's being played Friday, but I'll probably do a Sunday show again, maybe Saturday, but it'll be likely Sunday. So I'll see you again next weekend talking about the Apple Cup, what happened, and just wrapping up this Husky football season.